Next, we move on to the lower body. We've learned a lot about our posture and structure, we've learned a lot about breathing, and we learned a lot about how we move the arms in keeping with the principle of yin and yang, Wu-Ji, and then all together, Tai Chi. So now we're going to take a look at how we do that with the legs. The next exercise I like to call pouring water. In that, I imagine the image of two glasses side by side, one half full of water, the other half full of water. Pouring water is the idea that our bodies, when evenly distributing weight, tension, and our overall bearing and balance, are like two half-full glasses of water. But if I want to shift my weight and balance and energy into one side of my body, I have to pour the water all the way into that cup to empty this glass. And once this glass is empty, like an empty side of my body, I'm able to move it freely because it's unweighted and unencumbered. So I'm going to show you this pouring water exercise in a couple of steps so you can see how to advance in the exercise, eventually leading into our walking exercises. Beginning in the Wu-Ji posture might be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to bring my stance in a little bit to inner hip distance apart. The inner hip distance is roughly where Qi Chong is, right where the inner thighs meet the hip joint. By bringing my legs in, I don't quite have the perfect Wu-Ji alignment. This is a little bit more like Tadasana in yoga. But it's going to make it slightly easier for me to begin the practice of shifting my weight from one leg to the other. Other than the fact that my legs are closer together, overall, this is essentially just like Wu-Ji practice. We're just taking our entire center, our whole Wu-Ji, if you will, and moving it over from one side or to the other side. That's as simple as sinking down and sitting into one leg and gently lifting up the other. I lift up my pants here a little bit so you can see that I'm lifting up onto my toes. From the crown of my head, I'm still anchored, and I'm still relaxing down through both sides of my body. It's just that I'm guiding both sides of my body's relaxation into my left leg now. And the more I do sink down and relax into that leg, the more empty this becomes. Or vice versa, the more I lift this leg up, the more I have to sink into this leg. If not, if I stop the sinking, then that becomes like a shelf at the hip. And as I lift this leg, in order to become balanced, I'll have to lean the body to counterbalance the leg. So no matter what you do, you can't escape that yin and yang have to balance each other in nature. The only thing we can do is decide how efficiently they balance each other within us. So, by anchoring at the crown of my head, relaxing my shoulder well, Qi Men, Zhang Men, Qi Chong, and Ming Men in the back, and letting my hip relax and sink, bending my knee, and relaxing my whole pelvis, specifically my tailbone downward, I'm able to essentially pour the water or empty the glass of my right side, especially my right leg, into the glass of my left. In the beginning, you don't have to lift your leg all the way up. You can simply come up onto the balls of your feet or onto your toes. Then setting the foot down is like setting the glass down and drawing the water from the other leg into it. So I set my foot down and I just relax. Naturally, I can't even help it unless I try to fight it. If I simply relax and put my heel down, my weight will shift over a little bit into my right leg. And eventually, if I continue to be evenly relaxed in both legs, it will settle at center. Instead, I want to get all of my weight and balance, all of my energy to my right side. To do that, I'm going to then sink and settle from the top of my head down through my body into the floor, lifting the heel slowly, gradually as I'm sinking down. The raising of the left leg and the sinking in the right leg, just as it was on the other side, has to happen at the same time, in the same amount. If I lift faster than I sink, I'll have to tilt. If I sink faster than I lift, I'll just become uncomfortably loaded or uncomfortably yang in this leg and maybe begin to put too much energy into the joints of the knees or the hips or the ankles. So by lifting the leg up as I do so, I find the perfect balance, remembering to anchor from the crown of my head, sink down and relax through my torso, and allow this energy to spiral down as if inside the core of my leg I was drilling energy down through the bones into the ground. This internal spiraling energy downward is just like the spiraling energy that we can see in the hands as they go through their silk reeling patterns. It's just that with the foot stationary on the ground, it can't be seen, but it can be felt. Now remember that the knee doesn't buckle in when we do that. As I said, it's internal, as if it was going through the core center. It's an energetic feeling that may create some very slight subtle movements in the leg, but for the most part, the leg remains still. As you sink down, you lift up. More advanced, you can lift the leg all the way from the floor. Less advanced, keep the balls of your feet on the ground. Set the heel down. Let the weight begin to shift as if the glass is becoming both half full. Then pour all of the weight and all of that water or energy and substance into the other leg, either staying on the balls of your foot or lifting. I'll do a couple rounds holding my pants up. It might be looking a little silly, but I just want you to get to see how the shifting is gradual. And again, the interesting thing here is just like with the yin-yang breath exercise, there's an active and passive portion. The passive portion is as I set the foot down, my weight just simply slides over. The active portion is to get all of it all the way into the other leg, I have to sink. And the slower and more gradual I do it, the more I think about holding the anchor point at the crown of my head and sinking down, the easier it becomes. I'm going actually fairly quickly through this exercise so you can see it. But the truth is, sometimes when I practice this, I go what some might consider to be excruciatingly slow. When I go that slow, I can really feel the gradual shift and change between yin and yang from one side to the other. The weighted heavy side being yang, the light side being yin. Now a couple with the leg rising up. Even though you can't see my body necessarily lowering down very much, as I lift this leg up, I continue to sink my energy down. And there is a slight continuing bend in the leg, not one that I necessarily create, but like the arm raise that we practiced before, it just happens because my joints are relaxed and aligned and slightly bent. So they're like an absorbing spring. Like the springs in your mattress if you have a spring mattress. Same idea. Just as you put your weight into the bed, the springs bend, I put my weight into this leg and the leg bends and absorbs that energy. I'll show you a little bit from the side view. Notice how I keep my back straight, not rigid, but hanging from the crown of the head and relaxed. This is very important as we move into the walking phase of our exercises. That was pouring water. Next, we'll take a look at our very first walking exercise. I call it pouring water, rolling step. When it was taught to me, it was simply taught as a rolling step exercise. But after I discovered this concept of pouring water as the shifting between yin and yang from one side of the body to the other, specifically in the legs, I really felt that it applied greatly to the stepping and walking actions of the feet. So I'll be showing you that now. It follows the same rules as the shifting, pouring water exercise that we just practiced, but instead of having the feet be side by side, we step one foot just in front of the other. Again, I begin with my feet inner hip distance apart. This isn't necessary, but it makes it much easier to learn how to shift your weight instead of having to cross a greater distance and having to sink a little bit deeper and a little bit lower, which requires a little bit more strength. So again, I start inner hip distance apart, feet parallel, and all else is just like Wu Ji. I can keep my hands by my side, arms relaxed, filled with energy, extending all the way out to the palms and fingertips, just like in our Wu Ji practice. This exercise begins very much like my pouring water exercise did, by sinking my energy into one leg, and then I step the heel down just in front of the other foot. To show that, I'm going to do it to the side once. but because of limited space, I'll only be taking 1 or 2 steps. Notice how I pour the weight slowly, settling it down through the back of the body, through the front of the body, and letting the pelvis settle all the way into the right leg before I take my step. Anchoring from the crown of the head, relaxing through the torso. I get all of my weight into one leg, settling it there, sinking from the top of the head. And you'll notice that as the back leg lifts up to the toes, that's just like our pouring water exercise. In that as the leg lifts, I'm still sinking in the right leg to get all of my weight, all of my water over into that side. Then I step. The same applies backwards. When moving backwards, it's especially important to think of sinking straight down through the leg. If I think of moving backwards, chances are, before I pick up my front leg, I'll feel as though I'm tumbling back over my heel. In order to avoid that and to learn how to maintain Wuji while moving backwards, sink straight down, just like in pouring water, then step. Sink straight down into that leg by placing the heel down. Remember, there's a passive movement, but make sure you continue to think about sinking down into the leg. Get all the way there, maybe even lifting the toes of the forward leg, then step. So not only are you gradually sinking into the supportive leg, but you're also gradually withdrawing from the leg that's becoming emptied. And you might even take half steps. I encourage baby steps in this exercise so that you can focus on direct sinking rather than balance. Now from the front view, sinking down, getting all of my water poured here, especially relaxing through the back of the body, which tends to become tense in the lower back when shifting your weight. Really relax and sink. Draw the head of the hip bone back. This is what happens when you relax Qi Chong. But in case you're having some difficulty, really think about moving the thigh bone, the top of it, to the back of the pelvis, to the back of the hip. Then it'll be much easier to step. Only step naturally to the extension of your leg. Don't try to throw the leg out and land in a bigger step. Just touch the heel down. Then by placing the toes down, by placing the foot down, relax and let your weight pour into the left leg. That's the passive section. Sinking down into the left leg completely, lifting up the right leg simultaneously in the pouring water sequence, that's the active. Setting down, passive. Lifting and pouring in, active. Again, because of limited space, I only took a few steps, but of course you can continue to do stepping all throughout your house, through the park, wherever it is you like to walk. If you feel a little silly, it might be in your house. But it's very nice to go outside on a nice day that's not too hot and walk around and get to feel this while breathing fresh air.